99% of you who watch my videos aren't subscribed yet. Once we hit 1,000 subscribers, I'm planning to create some special videos for my subscribers. So if you enjoy what I'm doing and want to be part of this journey, hit that subscribe button. The cold, infinite void of space surrounded the outpost known as Vanguard Station, the last beacon of humanity's reach into the farthest frontier of the galaxy. Situated at the edge of known space, Vanguard served as both a research hub and a military outpost, a symbol of humanity's ambition and resilience. Its crew, a mix of seasoned soldiers, brilliant scientists, and skilled engineers, had grown accustomed to the solitude and the quiet, knowing they were the first line of defense against the unknown. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Blake, a veteran of countless skirmishes with pirates and rogue factions, sat in the command chair, her eyes fixed on the array of screens before her. The routine hum of the station's operations filled the air, but her attention was caught by an anomaly flashing on one of the displays. A distant rhythmic signal, faint yet unmistakable, had appeared on the sensors. "Lieutenant Hayes, what do you make of that?" Blake asked, her voice calm but curious. Ensign Jason Hayes, the station's communications officer, leaned forward, his fingers dancing over the controls as he tried to decipher the signal. "It's not natural, ma'am. Definitely artificial, but the frequency is unlike anything we've seen before. It almost seems like—" Before Hayes could finish his analysis, the signal abruptly intensified. The screens lit up with warnings as the anomaly resolved into something more tangible, an incoming fleet of ships, emerging from the depths of space like shadows drawn to a flame. The alien vessels were sleek, angular, and bathed in an eerie blue glow, their dark hulls reflecting the starlight in a way that made them seem almost liquid. Blake's heart skipped a beat, but she quickly regained her composure. "Raise shields. Prepare all defense systems. I want a full tactical analysis on those ships now." The crew snapped into action, the tension in the room palpable. This was no ordinary contact. This was a show of force. The alien ships moved with a predatory grace, taking positions around the station as if they were sizing it up. A sudden sharp chime signaled an incoming transmission. The voice that followed was cold, mechanical, and dripping with arrogance. "This territory now belongs to the Xerix Dominion. Surrender, and your extinction will be merciful." The words hung in the air, a stark reminder of the danger they were facing. The Xerix Dominion, an alien empire that, until now, had been nothing more than a whisper in the darker corners of space. Rumors spoke of their ruthlessness, their advanced technology, and their desire to expand their dominion at any cost. Blake knew they couldn't afford to show any sign of weakness. She stood, straightened her uniform, and approached the central comms console. Her crew watched her, their confidence in her unshakable. With a steely resolve, Blake activated the station's main communications array, her voice broadcasting not only to the alien fleet, but to every crew member on Vanguard Station. "Xerix Dominion," she began, her tone firm and unyielding. "This is Lieutenant Commander Rachel Blake of the United Human Federation. You want war? We'll give you war." Her words echoed through the station, a rallying cry that stirred something deep within the hearts of her crew. They were far from Earth, far from any reinforcements, but they were not alone. They had each other, and they had the will to fight. Blake turned back to the tactical display, where the Xerix fleet was already responding to her declaration. Their ships moved into a tighter formation, their weapon systems lighting up with an ominous blue glow. The first volley came without warning, a barrage of energy beams that streaked through space, slamming into Vanguard's shields with a force that shook the station to its core. "Return fire!" Blake ordered, her voice cutting through the alarm klaxons that blared in response to the attack. "Target their lead ship and concentrate all firepower!" The station's turrets roared to life, unleashing streams of kinetic rounds and plasma bolts. The dark expanse of space between the two forces erupted into a chaotic dance of light and destruction. The Xerix ships were fast, darting between the streams of fire with an agility that seemed almost unnatural. But Vanguard's crew was relentless. Every hit that landed on the alien ships was a small victory, a sign that they could stand their ground. In the midst of the battle, Blake's second-in-command, Major Alan Cross, monitored the enemy's movements with a grim expression. "They're testing us," he said, his voice low. "They're looking for weaknesses. Blake nodded, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. Then let's make sure they find none. The Xyrix fleet pressed their attack, their weapons battering the station's shields with unrelenting force. Blake knew that the station couldn't withstand this kind of assault forever. They needed a plan, something that would turn the tide in their favor. Major Cross, she said, her mind racing through the possibilities. Prepare the railguns for a focused barrage. We're going to punch through their formation and target their command ship. Cross nodded, immediately relaying the orders. The railguns, Vanguard's most powerful weapons, began to charge, their capacitors humming with energy. The station's shields flared as they absorbed another wave of enemy fire, but they held, barely. Fire! Blake commanded. The railguns fired in unison, twin lances of kinetic energy that tore through the void with terrifying speed. The projectiles slammed into the Xyrix formation, shattering one of their smaller ships and grazing the shields of the command vessel. The impact caused a ripple in the enemy fleet's formation, a momentary disruption that gave Vanguard the opening they needed. Now, all batteries, concentrate fire on their command ship, Blake ordered, her voice rising above the noise of battle. Vanguard's turrets adjusted their aim, focusing their fire on the Xyrix command ship. The alien vessel's shields flickered under the onslaught, but it held, returning fire with a vengeance. Beams of blue energy lanced out, slicing through the station's outer defenses and causing systems to overload. Shields at critical levels, Hayes shouted over the din. Divert all auxiliary power to the shields, Blake responded. We're not done yet. The station's lights dimmed momentarily as power was rerouted to the shields. Outside, the battle continued to rage, a deadly ballet of light and energy. The Xyrix command ship, damaged but still operational, began to retreat, its remaining escorts covering its withdrawal. They're pulling back, Cross observed, his tone a mix of relief and suspicion. But they'll be back. This was just the beginning. Blake watched the tactical display as the Xyrix fleet regrouped at the edge of the system. She knew Cross was right. This was only a prelude, a test to see what humanity was capable of. And now, they would prepare for the real fight. Get damage control teams on all critical systems, Blake ordered. We need to be ready for whatever comes next. As the crew scrambled to repair the damage and fortify the station's defenses, Blake took a moment to reflect on what had just happened. The Xyrix were unlike any enemy they had faced before, cold, calculating, and powerful. But they had survived the first encounter, and that gave her hope. Humanity had been underestimated before, and each time they had risen to the challenge. This would be no different. They had declared war on the Xyrix, and they would see it through to the end. After the first encounter, Vanguard Station was a hive of activity. Repairs were underway, and the crew prepared for what they knew would be the next wave of attacks. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Blake stood in the command center, eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the retreating Xyrix fleet. They had survived the initial assault, but Blake knew the Xyrix wouldn't remain idle for long. Blake called a quick meeting with her senior officers. We need to act before they regroup, she said. If we stay on the defensive, they'll overwhelm us. We need to hit them where it hurts. Major Cross, her second-in-command, nodded. A counterstrike could catch them off guard, but we're low on resources. We'll have to be smart about this. Blake outlined a daring plan, a preemptive strike on the Xyrix command ship, hoping to disrupt their coordination and buy humanity some time. It was risky, but they had no other choice. The crew worked quickly to prepare. Vanguard's fighters launched first, speeding toward the Xyrix fleet, followed by a barrage from the station's railguns and missile batteries. The Xyrix were ready, and the battle erupted in a furious exchange of fire. The sky was ablaze with energy beams and explosions as ships on both sides clashed. Vanguard's fighters weaved through enemy fire, targeting weak points on the Xyrix ships. But the enemy command ship was heavily shielded, and despite their best efforts, the human forces struggled to break through. In the command center, Blake watched with mounting tension. Focus all firepower on that command ship, she ordered, knowing that their victory depended on it. Finally, a critical shot from Vanguard's railguns pierced the command ship's shields, striking the hull and causing a catastrophic explosion. The Xyrix fleet, suddenly leaderless, began to falter and retreat. The human forces, though battered and weary, had won the battle. As the Xyrex ships withdrew, Blake knew this victory was only temporary. The Xyrex would return, and next time they would be even more determined. But for now, they had bought some precious time, and they would need to prepare for the next fight. The victory at Vanguard had given humanity a brief respite, but the war was far from over. The Xyrex fleet had retreated, but their presence still loomed on the edge of the system, waiting to strike again. Lieutenant Commander Blake knew they couldn't afford to wait for the enemy to regroup. It was time to take the fight to the Xyrex. Gathering her senior officers, Blake proposed a bold plan, a direct assault on the Xyrex homeworld. The goal was simple but ambitious: cripple the Xyrex leadership and force their fleet into disarray. It was a long shot, but it was the only way to end the war before the Xyrex could launch another devastating attack. The preparations were swift. Vanguard systems were patched up, and the fleet was assembled. As they set out on the perilous journey to the Xyrex home system, the crew knew that this mission could be their last. After weeks of travel, the human fleet arrived at the Xyrex homeworld. The planet was heavily defended, surrounded by a massive armada. The final battle was about to begin. Blake stood on the bridge of Vanguard, ready to lead the charge. "Prepare for the assault," she ordered, her voice steady. "We're going in." The human fleet launched a full-scale attack, breaking through the initial Xyrex defenses with a fierce determination. The battle was intense, with ships from both sides taking heavy losses. Blake directed the assault with precision, knowing that their only hope lay in taking out the Xyrex command center. As the battle raged on, a squadron of bombers managed to break through the Xyrex defenses, delivering a devastating blow to the enemy's command center. The explosion tore through the Xyrex leadership, leaving their forces in disarray. With their command structure destroyed, the remaining Xyrex ships began to retreat. The human fleet had won a decisive victory, but the cost had been high. As they began the journey home, Blake knew that they had secured humanity's survival, but the scars of the war would remain. The war was over, and humanity had emerged victorious. For now they could rest, knowing they had faced the greatest threat to their existence, and prevailed. The victory at Vanguard had bought humanity some time, but it was clear to everyone that the war was far from over. The Xyrex had retreated, but they would return with greater numbers and more firepower. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Blake knew that if they didn't act quickly, the next battle could be their last. The decision was made to launch a preemptive strike on the Xyrex homeworld. It was a bold plan, some might even say reckless, but it was the only way to end the war before the Xyrex could regroup and overwhelm the human defenses. The plan was simple: take out the Xyrex leadership, cripple their command structure, and force the remaining forces into disarray. The preparations for the assault began immediately. Vanguard Station, still scarred from the previous battles, was refitted for the long journey to the Xyrex homeworld. The crew worked tirelessly, knowing that this mission would be their most dangerous yet. Every system was checked and rechecked, every weapon calibrated to perfection. This was humanity's last stand, and they would not go down without a fight. As the fleet assembled, Blake addressed the crew one last time. They gathered in the hangar bay, the air thick with tension and anticipation. The faces of the men and women who had fought and bled beside her were etched with determination. "Listen up, everyone," Blake began, her voice carrying across the bay. "We've been through hell and back, and we've come out stronger each time. But this is it, our final mission. We're taking the fight to the enemy, and we're going to end this war on our terms. The Xyrex think they can conquer us, but they've underestimated humanity's will to survive. We're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for everyone back home, for our families, for our future. So let's show them what we're made of." The crew responded with a thunderous cheer, their spirits lifted by Blake's words. They knew the risks, but they also knew that this was their only chance to secure peace for humanity. The journey to the Xyrex homeworld was long and perilous. The fleet encountered numerous skirmishes with Xyrex patrols, each one a brutal reminder of the enemy's strength. But with each victory, the human forces grew more confident. They were not just surviving, they were winning. Finally, after weeks of travel, the fleet arrived at the edge of the Xyrex home system. The sight that greeted them was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The Xyrex homeworld was a massive hostile planet surrounded by a formidable armada of ships. This was the heart of the Xerix Dominion, and it was clear that the enemy would not surrender without a fight. Blake stood on the bridge of Vanguard, her eyes fixed on the enemy planet. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for, the final battle that would determine the fate of humanity. "Prepare all ships for the assault," Blake ordered, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "We're going in." The fleet moved into formation, Vanguard at the forefront. The Xerix Armada immediately responded, their ships moving to intercept the human forces. The battle began with a fury that dwarfed all previous engagements. The sky above the Xerix homeworld was filled with the fire of battle, as ships from both sides clashed in a desperate struggle for survival. The Xerix fought with the desperation of a cornered predator, their ships swarming the human fleet in a relentless assault. But the human forces were equally determined, their resolve unshaken by the enemy's ferocity. Vanguard's weapons blazed as the station led the charge, cutting through enemy ships with brutal efficiency. Blake coordinated the attack with a calm intensity, directing the fleet with precision. The plan was simple: punch through the Xerix defenses, reach the planet's surface, and take out the central command center. But the Xerix were prepared, and their defenses were formidable. As the battle raged on, it became clear that the only way to win was to take out the Xerix leadership directly. Blake ordered a strike on the alien command center, a massive structure at the heart of the planet's defense grid. The station's remaining fighters and bombers were dispatched on a suicide mission, their only goal to destroy the command center at all costs. The final assault was a harrowing experience. The human ships dodged and weaved through enemy fire, their pilots pushing their vessels to the limit. Explosions lit up the sky as ships on both sides were destroyed in the fierce fighting. But the human forces pressed on, their determination unshaken. Finally, the moment came. A squadron of bombers broke through the Xerix defenses, delivering their payload directly into the heart of the command center. The explosion that followed was cataclysmic, a blinding flash of light that tore through the Xerix homeworld's defenses. With their command structure destroyed, the Xerix forces faltered. The human fleet seized the opportunity, launching a final, decisive attack that shattered the remaining enemy ships. The Xerix Armada was destroyed, and the planet was left defenseless. The war was over. The Xerix threat had been eliminated, and humanity had emerged victorious. But the victory was bittersweet. The cost had been high, and the scars of the war would be felt for generations to come. As the human fleet began the journey home, Blake stood on the bridge of Vanguard, looking out at the stars. They had fought for their survival, and they had won. But she knew that the galaxy was a dangerous place, and there would always be new threats to face. But for now, humanity could rest. They had shown the universe that they would not be conquered, that they would fight for their existence with everything they had. And in the end, they had proven that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. And so, the story of the war between humans and the Xerix Dominion came to a close, a tale of courage, sacrifice, and the indomitable human spirit.